Were there camera tricks involved on that particular episode?
We were on a runway just north of London. Trucks were going 60 miles an hour or something. Wild. And my mother was there. They wanted my mother there to film. I'll teach you the first thing I ever learned.
Yes.
So it's just very simple. We have a coin. Hands are empty. No sleeves, nothing. And when you do this again, take this here. Coin disappears. So simple.
You have an interesting connection with magic and India.
There have been two instant loves in my life, and one was magic and one was India. Hey, namaste, मैं Drummond हूँ. ये Hey Karish है. Close? Yes.
Hi and welcome to another episode of Hey Karish. It's always a pleasure to have you back, and it's a pleasure to welcome guests into our home. Today, I'm so excited because I don't think I have ever had a one-on-one conversation in depth with someone that has a career that is this enthralling. So I'm very excited for you to meet my guest today. Hey DMC, welcome home.
Hey Karish.
How are you doing?
Lovely to be here. Thank you very much. Very good to be here.
Thank you so much for driving all the way out from Abu Dhabi to Dubai. Dubai roads giving you some trouble.
It's very easy. No,
Yeah.
quick trip, little commute.
All right. So just a little brief of, how we met. Now, I host a radio show called Subah in the City on City 1016 with my co-host Parikshit. And I think it was Pari that got in touch with your team or the other way around. Well, it led to you actually coming onto the show. And that was my first interaction with you. Truth be told, I was not expecting much more than what I have seen usually from people that I've seen at events. But you completely blew my mind. And I was like, okay, there's someone that's doing something unique for our generation. And there's got to be an interesting story behind it. So thank you for coming out today.
It's my pleasure. It's a story. It's definitely a story.
All right. So it's DMC, and you just mentioned to us that that's the brand.
Yeah, so DMC is the long version. So the full name is Drummond William Thomas Money-Coutts. Very long, very complicated old British name. Drummond is usually a surname, but I have it as my first name. So my initials are DMC. And so for magic, usually I use DMC, but on a personal level, it'll be
Drummond.
Drummond.
Fantastic. All right, Drummond. So you're an illusionist. You're an on-stage performer. You've done your own Netflix show. And you've also done a show, actually, when I was looking up about you, I found that there was a show called Beyond Magic that you used to do that was on Nat Geo.
I was on Nat Geo. I think somebody told me it's on Disney Plus now.
Now?
Because it's part of the group.
Oh, nice.
So I think it's there, but it was long back.
So you're a TV, personality. You're an OTT personality. Don't mind Lucky.
I love Lucky. I've been luckied already. I'm half lucky now. I love it.
You'll be full lucky by the time we're done.
We'll exchange.
And so you've obviously seen success. You've obviously made your mark. And you've made that quite early on in your career. How does one even begin to think of becoming an illusionist? Was this a childhood dream of yours?
It was something there from day one. So as a young child, I just loved to watch magic. I loved to read about magic, to practice magic. And then my father, so my surname Money-Coutts, there's a very old bank in the UK called Coutts Bank. Mm-hmm. And it's about 350 years old, very, very old private bank. And that's my father's family. So Tom Coutts founded the bank in 1692. And then my father's side of the family have been financiers ever since. So generations of banking. And what's funny is when I was about 8 years old, my father took me to a magic shop, which was underneath Coutts Bank, where he was working. He worked there for 20 years. And it's just up from Buckingham Palace. And he had all these stories because, for example, the royal family famously bank with Coutts in the UK. And Buckingham Palace is very close. And once a week, there is a special black taxi that leaves Coutts & Co., the headquarters. It's bomb-proof. It has special security, but it brings the cash from the bank to the palace for them to then give to the staff and whatever. There's all these very interesting stories around the bank. And I remember once he took us down to the vaults and all these very old trunks and, the stories that come from a bank this old. But underneath the vaults of the bank, as you literally go into the underground, the metro station, there was a very old magic shop. It was a fourth generation, more than 100 years old. It survived World War I, it survived World War II, and then very sadly, it went under in COVID. It was tragic. But he took me there. I was 8 years old. It was called Davenport's. And I walked into the shop, And I suddenly realized that I could learn to give people the sense that magic had always given me. So I could, that same giddy rush, that thrill of being a part of a piece of magic or watching magic, I could learn to almost be the drug dealer of that feeling, right? And I looked up to my father and I asked him very seriously, but why would anybody do anything else? If you could give this emotion to people, give this experience to people, why would I spend time doing anything else? And it seems a very youthful opinion, but it's something
How
I've really...
old were you then?
So I was 8. I was 8 years
You
old.
were 8.
I was 8 years old, and he bought me the catalog, and I memorized the catalog. I memorized every single trick that they sold, every deck of cards, the price of everything. And I bought a deck of cards, and then that began everything. And I've never, when I try to explain it to people, it's like when you meet the husband or wife in their 70s or 80s, and they say, I saw her when I was 16, and I've never looked at anybody else. That was what I had with magic. That it was such a powerful, instant connection that just, and it's been a journey. It's been a very challenging journey, but I've never once thought about anything else, even considering doing anything else.
And so clearly you come from generations of being bankers and, the royal family and I don't know what else, secret society had vaults in that underground, place. But was the family all right with this?
It was a discussion, and I was very fortunate. I went to Eton College, very old college in the UK, 500 years old, and went to university and was very fortunate in terms of my upbringing. And confidently, I'm probably the first student in 500 years to be a full-time magician. So it was certainly a sequence of discussions with my family, and I understand, looking back, it was a wild notion to go into the world with all my friends becoming lawyers and bankers.
Yeah. See, in an Indian household, this would not be one or two or even a handful of simple discussions. This would be that you're going to get excommunicated from the family. You're not going to be an heirloom. Yeah. So did you have any of that?
My parents are I think they saw very early how serious I was. And I'm made different on some levels. And there's many ways that I am that I have great many friends with much more, let's say, the standard careers, the standard lifestyles. I've always been very different. And I think it was just very clear that a struggle here would be futile, and that when I left university, I climbed Kilimanjaro with my father. It was a sort of father-son journey. And we were climbing, and I don't remember this, but again, he says we had this conversation. This was me going into the real world. And of course, I'd been doing magic for a long time. I'd be doing private shows. And he said to me, what's plan A? I said, plan A is magic. And he said, okay, I understand. And we walked on a bit further. And then he said, what's plan B? And I said, apparently, that plan B is to make plan A work. That was it. And again, it chimes with how I feel. I've just never looked left or right. It's always been...
blinds on.
I'm in this position where to be able to sit with 2 people or 50 people or 300 people and give them this experience with magic, these beautiful moments, it's very hard to look at anything else. And when I was at university, I worked a year in Madrid, and I worked for Merrill Lynch. And between school and university, I worked for Goldman Sachs, making money in London. And I just couldn't sit there juggling spreadsheets and making money and knowing that I could go into the world and give people these beautiful moments with their family, with their wives, husbands, with their children. And I would just feel it's an injustice to so many people when you find a way of putting goodness into the world, no matter how difficult that is or challenging that is. When probably when I was 15 or 16, I started doing friends' birthday parties, and I could have 15 people around me exploding with whatever I was doing with a deck of cards or whatever it might be. And you just think, there's no going back from this. There's nothing out there which comes close to this.
Yeah, I guess when the passion's that, visible, it's
so
kind of hard to argue.
So hard. You find that passion, that sort of ikigai, that blend of what you love and what you're good at and what serves the world. I could be doing something and be one of 100,000 people in the world who do this at a passable level. But when you find something that it burns within you, and it gives such joy to people. And then the benefits that come with the career that then help in other ways, other people in other ways. It's been impossible to put that down and even consider something else.
Wow. I don't think I've met very many performers that have had solid careers, in the absence of this kind of passion. So that is a prerequisite to feel so strongly about something. And I'm glad that it worked out for you. I'm glad that the banking career was short-lived. And this is the one. So this is obviously a great place to start from. You've got all the ingredients to make magic, quite literally. Do you remember when was the first time that you actually successfully pulled off a magic trick?
I think magic's one of those things that many people play with. As most young boys will have a chapter. They learn 2 or 3 card tricks, and you get that giddy rush of impressing a whole bunch of people. And I think it's quite uncommon to find someone who hasn't, certainly men, typically more men will play with magic for a moment, short-lived moment of something. So it started there, and I was, like I say, 8, 9, 10, was locked in. And then when I went to Eton when I was 13, one of my dearest friends at school was a magician. So we got there, and together, the two of us, we just spent every afternoon. We'd bunk off sports.
And what year is this?
1999, and then I left in 2004. So
very little access to internet.
This was the earliest dawning of the internet.
So how did you guys study? How did you educate yourselves?
It would literally be VHS cassette. You'd send off for a cassette tape that someone had recorded and re-recorded. Of course, today, magic is everywhere. TikTok and YouTube. And it's very easy to get into magic at a very low level. So most of it's quite basic entry-level magic. I think mostly the harder, more impressive magic is still quite hard to find. But back then it was impossible. I mean, I had to physically go to the shop in London, and I'd save up as much money as I could, and then I'd go and buy 2 decks of cards and a few coins or something special. And then that would be it. I'd have 7 weeks, 8 weeks where I'd have to just practice with those, and you'd save up and you'd buy a book. Or like I say, I remember there would be magicians you reach out to. There would be early forums, early chat rooms. And you'd say, I have this cassette tape, and they have this cassette tape, and I'll trade you. And so you'd go off and you'd send off one of those, plastic VHS tapes in a jiffy bag. And a week later, something else turns out from Canada, and you put it in, and it's a grainy, really low quality video. But you learn 2 or 3 more concepts or techniques or whatever it is. And it was tough. You had to earn it. And I think back then, again, it was a rite of passage. Things were harder, whatever it was, 20 something years ago, but you had to prove yourself. You couldn't just Google something and have everything at your feet.
Yeah.
And so, the two of us, we were, best friends all the way through school. He remains a very close friend of mine. He's now teaching at Eton. He's now teaching French. He's gone back to teach French. He's very bright, very academic. He was a scholar when we were there, and super intellectual. But we would pour through, these early magic websites and try to find manuscript. I mean, it would literally be manuscripts. There would be 100 copies of a magician would write up their repertoire or a certain routine or a certain handling for a piece of card magic. They print 100 copies. That was it. And you had to go out there and find these stapled, badly photocopied copies of whatever it would be and learn that piece of magic. And there was something beautiful about it. Again, now I just think today in the world, there's so much ease and comfort, and Amazon comes guaranteed today by 4 p.m. or whatever it might be. Back then, you had to wait weeks
wait. Yeah.
And not know if it would turn up. Tracking was not very common. And so you could pay somebody something and not even know what was going to turn up.
Yeah.
So it was a journey. It was a real journey you had to really commit yourself to learn magic. And then when I started traveling, everywhere I go to, I try to find local magicians.
And one of the places that you've traveled extensively to is India. And you have quite a lot of interesting, you have an interesting connection with magic and India, I have noticed.
Yes.
Tell us about the India
Jaadu,
story.
The Jaadu. Well, So, like I said, I left school, went to work for Goldman Sachs. This was 6 months. A lot of people in the UK, you take this year between school and university, gap year. And so you go and you make as much money as you can, and then 6 months you take off and you travel with a bunch of friends, and people go to South America or India or whatever. So my grandmother was always in love with India. She adored India, and I grew up looking at all her photo albums and pictures of the Red Fort and pictures of Udaipur and the lake. And I was the first choice for me to go to. So I worked at Goldman's. I did not enjoy Goldman Sachs. I did not enjoy that corporate life. Again, I'd already tasted what it was to create magic for people and to make meaningful money that way. So when I was at Goldman's, I would leave the office and I would go to a private show and make good money. And so by the time I left, I literally went from Goldman's, and I probably landed in Delhi. I landed about 2:00 in the morning, 2 days later. And it was this stark difference between this clinical steel and glass office on Fleet Street in London, corporate environment where there's barely a piece of paper on the floor, to Delhi, and Delhi is this beautiful chaos, and the smells and the sights and the colors and the energy and the middle of the night. It's very strange arriving in a country that you've never been to in the middle of the night. You don't get a real handle. Everything feels more mystical, and it's dimly lit, and there's that inscrutable magic to it. And so I remember I landed in Delhi with my friend George, and we went and we were met by a family friend who my grandmother knew. My grandmother knew a man called Jagat Singh Mehta. He was foreign minister in India. And his son is my sister's godfather, and my father is his daughter's godfather. And so we're very, very close. And so we went to stay at his beautiful home in Friends Colony. And I just fell in love straight away. Again, like magic. There have been 2 instant loves in my life, and one was magic and one was India. And there was, I think, I was explaining this to somebody a few months ago, and I said, when sometimes somebody comes out of an abusive relationship and the next person they meet, they marry. It's like you've been in this dark place with somebody for so long, and then the next person just is your salvation, and that's what it is. I think part of it was Goldman's was just this sterile, corporate, slightly bleak office environment where they had this, I remember this glass atrium in the middle of the building, and the daylight would come through. And it took me 3 months to realize it's not daylight. They have a roof over that glass atrium. It's artificial lighting that makes it feel, when you're there at 8:30, in the evening in November, that there's still daylight coming through. It's what they do in casinos. They make it feel like, there's no time passed. You're still focused. And so it wasn't my place. It wasn't where I wanted to be. And then suddenly Delhi was in every way possible the opposite. Chaos and just unpredictable and beautiful and just colorful and wild in all the most beautiful ways.
So how long did you stay there for? 6 months?
So I was in India that trip for 3 months. We were in Delhi, we went straight down to Udaipur where Vikram's father Jagat was living. A beautiful old Indian home in just outside Udaipur. They have a family charity, so we worked for the charity for about a month. And then we jumped around, went to Mumbai, went to Jodhpur, went to Jaisalmer, Kerala, Goa. And then George flew to Hong Kong. And I ended up going on my own to Calcutta. And I landed, again, meeting magicians everywhere I could. I would go and meet these Jadugars. And I remember in Jaisalmer, so beautiful. We were there, we were walking along, and there was a little Indian boy. And I have a picture somewhere, I'll send to you, 7 years old. And he came up to us and he put a little carpet on the floor and he brought out these little 3 cups. And it's the Indian style cups. And it's a very famous piece of magic, but in India it's done differently. And he knelt down and he started doing magic. And I was 18. I was so madly in love with magic, and I couldn't believe I was seeing an authentic Indian 7-year-old magician. And he knelt down, he did this beautiful sequence. And of course there's a big crowd, these tourists and locals gathering around. And I remember the final thing he did, he reached out and asked for coins. And, we all reached out and took coins and gave them to him. Yeah. And he had this wooden stick. It was like a very basic magic wand. It was just a very plain wooden stick. Yeah. And he just held the coins and waved the stick. And then the coins disappeared. And then he literally scooped up his carpet Oh, it's all right. He's all right.
We've got a bit of
we got a love
pet
story.
greedy situation.
It's all right.
He's greedy for pets is what it is.
We're now a double act.
He'll never let you stop.
We're a double act now.
Lucky.
It's okay.
Good
It's
boy.
okay.
Come on. Your one arm's going to get the work out of your life.
I love it. No, I love it. We had dogs. I haven't had a dog for years, but we grew up with dogs. But like I say, he made the coins disappear, and then he scooped up all of his things and he disappeared. That was his payment. And so I ran after him and I grabbed him, and through a local, I found out more about him, and it turned out his father was a relatively famous magician. And instead of just having his kids sit around or beg, he would teach them each magic, and they would go into the streets and they would make, I think, probably quite good money. And he was so talented, and we sat down and I showed him some things, and I do have a picture somewhere with him. But it was just magic that I'd never seen before.
You must find that picture.
I'll send it.
Drummond.
It's a beautiful, it's just, and you see he's looking up at me, and he's got the stick and the cups. And I'm as wide-eyed as he is, and so I did that, and then would find magicians in Mumbai and Delhi, and then I ended up in Calcutta, and I went to a magic convention. So this was like 100 of Calcutta's best magicians, and for 2 or 3 days I was there, and it was so different. It was because every culture will have its own magic. This is what's so beautiful about magic. Like music, it varies as much as music. It varies as much as dance or combat or cuisine, different foods. Magic has a different flavor in every country and culture. So I again spent 2 or 3 days just sitting with these magicians and learning and trading, because what they do, I don't know, and what I do, they don't know. And so you have these little trade-offs and you exchange little ideas. And then I flew to Bangkok, and I talked about this in the show. Then I went to Bangkok and met a whole bunch of extraordinary people, including Mr. Somkid, who was this card cheat, I think I mentioned. And he was this man. So again, got to Bangkok. I was there a few weeks before my friends. So I flew in from Calcutta. I was 18 and a half, 19. I remember I went to the Khao San Road. I had a backpack. I had like 2 bags of magic stuff, books and cards, and I would drag them. It was so heavy, but I would drag them everywhere. And went to Bangkok, and I, again, would meet local magicians, young local card magicians. There was a French magician called Vincent who was living in Bangkok and was very talented. And Vincent introduced me to a man called Mr. Somkid. Mr. Somkid was a professional card cheat. So obviously in Thailand, gambling is illegal. Like many countries, gambling is very, very illegal. But of course, with that, what grows up is a very underground culture of gambling. So within Bangkok, you have these underground gambling dens, sort of illegal casinos where people would go and bet money and gamble. Mr. Somkid would cheat for the casinos against the players, right? So he would be sort of protected by the house, but he would go there and cheat people. And it's not for me to judge, but Mr. Somkid would do things with cards I'd never seen before. And the difference between, some magicians would say, I can walk into a casino and clear them out or whatever. Mostly not true at all. The methods within card magic and the methods within card cheating are poles apart. And there's some crossover, but very little. And the level of skill required to be a card magician typically can be very high, but you can also be at quite a basic entry level and still impress people. So it's permissible to not be very good as a card magician. As a card cheat, in illegal gambling dens in Bangkok, it's not at all permissible.
You're playing a high-stakes game there.
It's a whole different thing. And he had stories he had a friend of his who had been killed, and he had all kinds of stories. But as I say, what he could do with a deck of cards was flawless. And you could say 27, and he'd reach out and he'd cut a packet of cards and count them, and it would be 27 cards. Or you'd say 6 of clubs, and he'd just shuffle the cards and produce a 6 of clubs. And what's interesting is where he was gambling, you wouldn't have a table. So, for example, Las Vegas card cheats, they'll use what's called holdouts. So you can use the table for cover. So there are various things you can do. You can, obviously you're sat there with your knees, you can tuck things under your knees, you can tuck things under the table. People will have little pins under the table to hold a card. In Thailand, you sit on the floor. So it's completely different method of cheating. In the West, typically we use paper playing cards because it's cooler weather. In warmer countries, typically there'll be plastic playing cards, which handle completely differently. It's a very different feeling. So there's so many little details to it. And he was a master of everything. He could just do the most extraordinary things. And I remember there's a game in Thailand. where they have two bowls and you put dice inside and you shake the bowls and you pick it up and you see what the number is. The idea with the bowls is you can't cheat. You can't handle the dice. Mr. Somkid could cut the tip of his finger and insert a little magnet underneath the skin. And then, of course, when he could switch out the dice, and then in holding the bowls, the magnet would turn the dice to whatever number he needed as part of the game. It was this level of commitment to cut open the flesh of your finger and put a magnet inside. It was this level. And I spent 2 weeks with him. And again, it was like my Kung Fu Kid chapter where you just realize I've met some magicians in London who are quite good and quite talented, but there's a whole level of skill here that I'd never seen before. And I spent about 2 weeks with him and then caught up with a bunch of people and we went traveling. But just these extraordinary moments when you just meet these characters that change the direction of everything. And you meet them and they blow open a new door of understanding within your mind. And within magic, I've been very blessed to meet some of these people. And
this Mr. Somkid sounds like the next Netflix, true docu. I feel like if Netflix is watching this, they need to find this Mr. Somkid and then track down his full story.
We went back. We went back when I had my National Geographic show. So when I went to London, I started as a professional, would do private shows, but then was approached by Nat Geo to make a special. And the special was called Card Shark. And I did very well for Nat Geo. It was a huge hit with them. And I wanted to start by exploring that world between a card cheat and card magic. There's such beautiful history, characters, methods, all of this. So we went back to find him as part of the show, and I filmed with him. And by then he was retired. But he again was this sort of Mr. Miyagi, this gray silver beard, long beard, and incredible face. And we found him. I remember we went back. We had to recce in Bangkok before we went. We filmed in London, Paris, and Bangkok. And we went back not knowing if we could find him. And I went back to some of my old contacts in Bangkok. And they said, this is his number. This is where he's living. And we went back and found him. And he graciously allowed us to film with him. I think he's now selling magic. I think he sort of transitioned into magic.
Yeah.
But again, still just did things I'd never.
So interesting. You are a Netflix star. You've done Death by Magic, which is such a scary show to watch. It's literally, edge of your seat, nail biting every episode. And I remember you mentioned that there were some very real injuries on set. Why would you come up with a concept like this?
A little bit of a backstory with the show. So, like I say, we made Card Shark. Off the back of Card Shark, National Geographic said we want a full series. We love this documentary magic style. It was for me, what's very important is that there's a narrative sense. It's not just a magic show with random celebrities. You're just doing random tricks in random places. It needs this sense of story. So that's what we really hit. We really developed this style of making television where magic met meaningful narratives and really fascinating stories in the real world. So we were doing this, but between the special and the series, I did a commercial for the European Golf Tour. And I was doing magic with these incredible golfers, some of the best golfers, Jose Olazabal and a bunch of amazing French, Spanish, English players. And as part of that, we were meant to finish the whole project by me escaping being torn apart by two golf buggies.
Oh.
Right? So this was just this idea we came up with. We said, look, let's come up with a dramatic finish. We're going to be at Gleneagles, this beautiful golf hotel in Scotland. Let's finish the whole sequence by this big dramatic escape. So we said, fine. But this was my first ever commercial project. I'd never worked on anything at this level, and I couldn't find consultants. I reached out to a bunch of people. Nobody got back to me. And I was like, okay, well, we're just going to have to do this. So we came up with a bunch of beautiful ideas, most of which worked 100%. But again, being young and naive, but very keen to make it work, we came up with these safety mechanisms for the golf buggies. And we got everybody there, a couple of hundred people, the cameras right in front of the hotel. And we shot all the other magic. We got everybody together for this big finish. And it started raining just before we started filming. And for details, I won't go into it. That messed with the mechanisms we had.
Oh, no.
And so the producer looked at me and he said, look, what's the process here? Because this isn't what we had planned. It wasn't going to work. So being a young, naive moron, I said, we'll do it for real. If the safety mechanism if it's not gonna work, we just do this for real. And we didn't even really talk about it. He just said, he asked me once, are you sure? I said, yes, we can do this. And that was it. So we were suddenly doing this 100% for real with no safety mechanisms. Mm-hmm. And again, everyone's there, everyone's waiting. And basically I had handcuffs on, my elbows were attached to long ropes, which were tied to a golf buggy each, which were set off. They would start here and then they whip past me and go in opposite directions. And I had to get out of the cuffs and the ropes before the ropes went tight. And one was in front of me, one was behind me. I was on my knees and there was these coils of rope and we did the countdown and go. And the buggies, which had the brakes taken off. So they were fast, super fast buggies. They whipped past me and I was gauging from this coil of rope how much time I had. And I didn't want to get out with 5 seconds. I wanted to keep it quite tight. So I got the cuffs off, but then didn't realize as part of the rain, the ropes were now tighter. They'd tightened in the water. And so they were harder to get off my arms. They wouldn't just slip off. I had to really work them off. And so I reached up, I got the cuffs off. I got this rope out of my hand and as literally the moment I let go of this rope, my right elbow was whipped up into the air and I got dragged off my feet and just dragged down the tarmac in front of everybody. Super dramatic. People are screaming. I stand up. There's blood everywhere. My clothes are shredded. This side of my body is shredded, blood. And I think I stood up. It was such a strange moment. I stood up and I got the rope off and I bowed. Like this was what we were meant to do. And I think you go into this traumatized state of mind where you just don't know what to do. And obviously the footage was deleted. It was never used. But some people took photos. It got into the press. It was a story. So then when we made the Netflix show, one of my producers said, look, it's a great story. Why don't we revisit this? Because it really gave me real problems for a couple of years after that. I would wake up and hear the sound of the rope on the gravel and just go back to that moment and how close it was to both of my arms being attached to half-ton golf buggies going at 40 kilometers an hour and then you just can't even process what the human body does under that.
And so when they say, let's do this again, you're like, yeah, okay, let's go.
So I could see the merit in the story. And I knew that with National Geographic, we'd have better mechanisms in place. We'd have a better crew, better safety. But it was still a huge thing to confront. And so we made this episode, which is called Torn Apart. And you can see the final version. It's on YouTube. It's called, if you just look for DMC Torn Apart, you can see that version. And we revisited it. Instead of half-ton golf buggies, they were 7-ton trucks. We were on a runway just north of London. Trucks were going 60 miles an hour, something wild. And my mother was there. They wanted my mother there to film. That episode went crazy. And it was a super viral, crazy in those days. This was 2013, 2014. Very viral episode for them. And then off the back of that, Netflix then came. And I think they were in development with a sort of prank comedy magic show. And they were exploring magic. And they said, well, okay, let's move in a different space. This is amazing. Can you do more of this? And so I went to Los Angeles and I met Netflix, and we found that tragically there's a whole bunch of stories of magicians dying in pursuit of attempting remarkable stunts right around the world. And from 10 years ago to 150 years ago, a whole bunch of tragic stories. And so we looked at this and thought there's something here making a show that looks into these stories, these remarkable people who gave everything in pursuit of magic, in pursuit of entertaining people and committing to their craft. And so we then put this together. It was a $10 million show. We shot 8 episodes across 5 countries. We went to India. We went to South Africa. We looked at these incredible stories. And it was just one of the most traumatizing experiences of my life, because we were, again, as much as we had a lot of money, we had safety crews, things go wrong. You look at Alec Baldwin, who shot someone dead on a movie. In a movie, there shouldn't be a bullet on set, let alone loaded into a gun, let alone, there's a whole sequence of events. People talk about the Swiss cheese theory. I don't know if you know this, but in aviation, they talk about the Swiss cheese theory, which is effectively when a sequence of minor things happen. So for example, when there's a hole in a piece of cheese, and there's another hole. But when those holes line up and you can see through the cheese, that's what happens in many cases for a perfect disaster. So in aviation, they talk about this when a leaking fuel tank combines with a frayed cable, and there's 3 or 4 little things, but they come together to this absolute perfect storm.
I'm sure my husband knows about this.
Is this this is right? Yeah. So I've heard it's in aviation, but I'm sure in many different things, all kinds of areas of life. But this happens, and again, Alec Baldwin. It's unthinkable that a live round should be on a set. With magic, we allow ourselves certain levels of deception and safety and mechanisms and techniques. But at the same time, every single stunt has 100 people that have to be utterly convinced. So you're not bringing in actors and giving them money. Everybody would be wheeled in, and I would walk out like it's a live performance, like it would be on stage. And you have to convince them. So we are against it at a level that no movie comes close to. And under that kind of pressure, when you're jet lagged, we shot 6 episodes back to back, 10 shoot days with a travel day in between. Everybody's jet lagged. Things are forgotten. Things didn't arrive in time. The venue's fallen through. The weather's holding everybody up. And so you just get these days where just pretty basic things happen. And we did 8 stunts. And again, people think it's Netflix, it's this, it's television, it's all for the cameras.
There are comments that say that, there's people that believe, and not just with this show, but in general with magic or illusions on TV, it's like, it's editing. I'll never believe it until I see it in real life.
For sure.
So what do you do with that? Or you just take it with a pinch of salt?
No, I understand it. And I get it. I completely get it. And there's absolutely all manner of TV shows that lean into that. And it's not something you can ever, as a magician, that you can't really prove it otherwise. People are going to take their opinion, they take their opinion. But I think out of the 8 stunts, 3 of them I had to go and see paramedics for various things, for cuts, for smoke inhalation, burns. We did 2 stunts with fire, one in Udaipur, one in Los Angeles. Both stunts, we had horrendous mistakes in rehearsals, very seconds away from life-changing injuries kind of mistakes. Neither one was on camera. But terrible accidents. People were fired immediately. People sent home the next day because of how basic these mistakes were. And it took me months to wind down from that, because you're just living at this level where you pull off one stunt and 9 days later, and I'm cuffed underwater in a car filled with the Miami stunt. I'm cuffed inside a car, and they put basically a fireman's hose in the car, and it's filled up with water, and I have to get out of the car, and it's horrendous. And the water's moving up like this, and there's chains around my neck and chains around my hands, around the steering wheel. And you pull that off, and you have 10 minutes of celebrating. And
so
they go
straight up, okay, you can say no comment.
Yes.
But were there camera tricks involved on that particular episode?
No, that live audience we had, we were in the middle of Miami on the beach. There were a bunch of people on camera, but there were 400 people standing there with iPhones, cameras, and whatever. So no, that was, again, if we shot in a warehouse and we closed everything off and we brought in 50 people and we did it 5 times, you go, okay, fine, we're going to get one of it doesn't matter. But again, what we put ourselves into as a production, you're fully in public. There's no screens hiding you. Anybody can come past with a drone or a long lens camera or an iPhone. They can walk around the back and film something, put it online. That one specifically, we were wide open. And part of my emotional reaction at the end of that was basically the fact that no one had slept in 3 days. The car wasn't even holding water. There was no one on that. We had 120 people working behind the scenes on that one shoot, where I'm in the car and the car fills up with water. I have real issues with water like that anyway, but nobody on the crew knew how to watertight a car. And so 20 minutes before we're shooting, the car's not holding water. So the only method we could, and then we did one rehearsal, and when we opened the doors, the hinges bent, so then they wouldn't even close properly. So we couldn't even close the door to keep the water in. This is all happening 30 minutes before we're meant to shoot. And so they said, right, get that forklift, drill holes in the doors, and pull cables through. And so those doors are being held in position by cables that are going under my legs. And the only way those doors are opening is if the forklift operator pushes the button in time. And it was chaos from top to bottom. Everybody was screaming at each other. Nobody had slept in 3 days. Just nothing was working. And part of my reaction partly was the cuts and the blood and the adrenaline of doing it, but a huge part of it was the release, because it was the most unthinkable. The 20 minutes before, nothing was working, and we were basically going to have to either cancel the whole thing or come back at another time for maybe another $200,000 or whatever it would have been to rent a beach with 120 crew and cameras, and it was just so intense. When I pull down the cloth and I'm standing there and everybody's going crazy, I just knew we'd done it, and I knew that it hadn't been perfect, and a whole bunch of things we could have done better, but fundamentally we'd got it in the bag. And then I didn't even realize I had blood on my hands and my face for a couple of minutes. I go and I hug that. There's a lady that I hug, and then she has a denim jacket, and she has this blood hand on the back of her jacket. But again, that was just one moment where there's so much that goes on behind the scenes. And of course we allow, as magicians, it's a great magician in the UK called Darren Brown, who's a mind reader, mentalist. And a great quote of his, he says, we are inherently dishonest, but we're always honest about our dishonesty, right? So we use all manner of things as magicians, right? Psychological, physical, dexterity, sleight of hand, all manner of things. But fundamentally, you're chained up in a car that is being shut with cables, right? From a forklift that's 50 feet away. He can't see me. I'm on fire. And, again, in rehearsals, we got it wrong and nobody was near me when I was meant to be extinguished. I mean, there was nobody near me. The people we had holding the fire extinguishers who were meant to put me out were audience members who we'd asked the day before to come and put on a jumpsuit and squeeze a fire extinguisher at me. These are not trained people.
Why would you take a chance like that with your life?
Because this is the chaos of television. And people just think, oh, you've got months and you just do a read. No, you're on set. It's taken months to plan for this. Your window is tiny. And in America, the stipulations in terms of filming hours, and it's very tight. You can't go over by 3 minutes. Lunch break this is it. If you're mid-shot, the cameras go off and everyone has their lunch for an hour and you come back. That's it. So these are unbelievably chaotic days.
Wow.
I mean, the fire one, by way of just a final example, I was in a jumpsuit, and when you're set on fire, I had 2 layers of basically fleece that they soak overnight in freezing cold safety gel. So I basically, in the middle of the night, we were shooting at like midnight in the middle of this field outside Los Angeles. I basically had to strip naked, put on 2 layers of fleece in freezing gel, and then put on a jumpsuit. And then you go up to I was chained up to this post and then set on fire. Again, you think there's some clever Hollywood. No, they take Zippo fuel and just slosh you in Zippo fuel. That's it. You smell like a Zippo lighter. They just cover you in flammable fuel, and that's it. And we did a rehearsal, and then I went back to get on my next, because obviously the jumpsuit is trashed. Go back to get my other jumpsuit, and it's 2 sizes too. I can't even get it over my waist. And this is it. We're done. We've got 200 people waiting. We've got 150 crew. We're in the middle of nowhere, and it's these tiny things, which you just need one of these. And so there was a whole bunch of screaming, and somebody was forced to take the jumpsuit I just used to wash and tumble dry it at literally someone's home. They said, go to someone, knock on someone's door, give them however much money they need, and force them to wash and dry this. We need this back in 40 minutes. And we got it back. And the one that I use in the show is that jumpsuit. And it's just things like this. Again, TV, you sit on the sofa, you think, oh, it's so gentle, and it's chaos from sun up.
I don't even know why you did this. Now I'm hearing all this and I'm like, come on, no amount of money is enough. You're doing this for some kind of madness.
No, it's a form of, well, look, to be approached by Netflix and offered an opportunity like this was a remarkable thing. And you're working with incredible people. It's like anything, like you're setting up a business, it was a remarkable project, but
I'm not a magician, and if they came to me, I'd do it.
Right.
Okay, the thrill of it is something else.
It's a beautiful journey.
Now, the things about you that are most amazing are that how come this didn't happen before? Like, how come I haven't seen someone in our own generation that is this passionate about doing what you do? How come I haven't met someone who's a resident magician here in Abu Dhabi. You're in the UAE, and that's a first time as well, isn't it?
First time in the GCC. I mean, really first time in the in the history of really the Middle East as a region, as we discussed. Within Islam, within Islamic culture, the notion of magic has certain taboo connotations to it. It's not like in English. In English, magic has 57 definitions, from the very good to the very bad, from voodoo to the magic of a Buddhist monk in the Himalayas, to the magic of a little girl at Disneyland, and the magic, all different styles. As I have been told, within Arabic, seher refers to black magic, and that's it. There isn't a lighter side of that word. It just means, it refers to voodoo, effectively, within the Quran. It's all wrapped up within jinns and spirits and has these very heavy connotations, which means that magic as a form of entertainment hasn't really developed at all, because it's so, the whole idea of magic is so weighted, which makes perfect sense. And again, when you travel around the world, this is the beauty. In India, you have Jaadu, you have Jadugas. There's a beautiful history of performing magicians and the Indian rope trick and all these incredible performers. You go to Mexico, magic is, again, witchcraft. We went to a witchcraft market called Sonora Market, where you can buy potions and hexes. You can buy a death curse. You can go to visit a witch and give the name and the photo of somebody you want to put a death curse on, and you pay her money, and she'll get her feathers and her little, powders, and she'll do this.
Yeah, I have so many questions.
So many questions,
Oh,
right? But that's a form of Mexican magic, and we explored that for National Geographic. We went and met some very strange people. But it's what's beautiful, again, about magic. And in this specific part of the world, within Islamic culture, magic has carried this certain interpretation to it. And it's been my ambition since COVID and various things happened and there was a change of plans. And I thought, well, what could be more wonderful than come to this incredible part of the world and not challenge that? I don't wish to dispel any existing notions, but I would like to introduce culturally this beautiful style of magic, which to this moment, there's been a few magicians here and there at a restaurant, but at the wider level, the magic that I do is almost completely unexplored. And the notion of being here and helping to develop that. And God willing, one day, I think it's absolutely possible to elevate magic everywhere here, to do it in a way that hasn't been done. I go to Las Vegas and I feel my soul dying inside of me, to go to Vegas and you just see so much of it. And it's not a wholesome place. And it's the home of magic, but to me, it's the least magical place on the planet. It's drinking and excess and gambling and sort of dark forces. And I just, magic in Vegas is sort of slightly locked in that 1980s Vegas style. And I just think there's such an opportunity here to elevate magic into this beautiful space, new space, more elevated, more refined. And the show that we have at the Emirates Palace is a reflection of that. It's exclusive and it's beautifully presented, and the theater is like nothing anyone's ever seen before. And it's a whole new take on what I think is this quite outdated Vegas style of magic.
We were there, you invited us. And so my husband Chandran and I and, our parents, his parents were there. So I remember we walked in there not really knowing what to expect. And because I had met you before that, I knew that you brought a sort of old world charm, to what you do. But honestly, from the first thing that you did, which was these things that you made us
Indian, right? The Indian story.
It was so beautiful, and everything sit exactly as it was meant to. Of course, I'm guessing you've had now years of experience with working with people and with a lot of these things. But for us, we're experiencing it pretty much for the first time, in so many years, live and actual in-person performance. And I think Chandan will agree with me when I say that I think we were just not ready for what came and were blown away entirely.
Thank you.
The one I still remember, and we came home and, my eldest, she's almost 14 now.
Yes.
And she went through this phase of dabbling in magic and all of that. And so when we came home and I told her all about it, and she was like, no, I think I know how he did that one. I know how he did that one,
Yes.
And I was like, there's no way to figure this out. You gave me a book, a random page someone called out,
Yes.
and I pulled out a word, and then you figured out the word with some random deck of cards it was too many unconnected elements that led to the perfect connection between question and answer.
Well, I think that's what I'm most proud of with the show is the layers to it. And you go and see some magic and it's A to B. Take something, vanish it. Take your ring and it vanishes and it's in this fruit. That's it. And what's so lovely when I constructed Impossible, the show, is that I wanted to weave everything in. So you have these callbacks and this moment 20 minutes ago, suddenly this moment and the choice, this lady mentioned something and this chap mentioned something and suddenly it all weaves together and you realize the relevance of everything. And it's been this, this long con. I've been getting everybody in the right position for the big finish. So it's a very, very special thing. And it's a combination of my favorite magic in the world woven into my story and what inspired me and my first time in India.
Yeah. I'm guessing for anyone that's watching this episode and they're in the UAE, the next time they mention the word magic around their phones, and then the next time they use their phone's going to show them ads of your show, Impossible. Because that's what's been happening to me.
Oh, is it? It's happening?
Because we've been in conversation.
Interesting.
And my phone's been popping up, ads of you. I've been seeing them more and more.
Okay.
That's some kind of magic
as
well.
This is the Google magic.
Right? Well, so, sorry, when you just turned right now for an instant,
Yes.
and I noticed the tattoo again.
Tattoo.
What does it say? I've forgotten.
So it's Hausla, Pyar, Vishwas.
Hausla, Pyar, Vishwas.
So when I first went to India, I was reading all these books, and I read Shantaram, and I read the Hinton Mystery, and the great Indian novels, and there's nobody who romanticizes India more than I do, and it's funny because when I speak to Indian people about India, they say, "Gosh, I've never thought of my country in this way," and I worship every element of the culture, the country, the food, the people, the resilience, the way that Indians celebrate life at every single possible moment, and coming from the West where everybody has it largely much easier and yet manage to grumble and complain so much more. Indians, I always say to people in the ways that truly matter in life, I think India is one of the wealthiest nations on the planet. And, it's a big part of me weaving that into the show. But when I went there the first time, I was reading all these books and so inspired by India. One book I was reading was called, actually nothing to do with India, but it's called Man's Search for Meaning, which is a beautiful book. And it's by a man called Viktor Frankl, who was a Jewish prisoner. He went to 4 prison camps in World War II. He came out, he lost his mother, his father, his brother, his pregnant wife, everybody. And he wrote this book. And it's a book about finding meaning through suffering. And it's a very short book. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. It's very commonly voted top 20 most influential books of the 20th century. Very powerful book. Logotherapy is his study of meaning. Logotherapy. And he wrote this book, and I was reading this, and it really, I zoomed out. Probably much too much for a 19-year-old, but I was thinking about life in the broader sense, and I just thought, I want to live by principles. I don't want to be pushed. And when I hit 25 or 40, suddenly my whole value system changes. I want to have principles that I would adhere to for my whole life. And so I sat down, I really thought about what would be 3 elements that I could never say. I've changed a little bit on this. 3 mantras. And so I wrote 3 phrases. And then I spoke to my friend Mohammed, who lives in Udaipur. And I said, brother, if you would capture each one of these in a phrase, well, in a word, Hindi word, what would they be? And he said, Hausla, Pyar, Vishwas. So then when I was in London, I tattooed it. And it's the little bit of India that I carry with me. And I just, my dream, I think I said, when COVID hit and I went to India, I flew to India, beginning of 21. There was that little window. Do you remember when India started opening cricket matches and weddings, and the whole world said,
yes,
India's the first nation to beat COVID? And of course, it was way too early. But there was that little window, and I spoke to my visa. I had this great visa man in London, and I said, could I get a ticket to India? Because London is so bleak and so dark and so whatever. He said, yeah, I can get you a visa. So we worked it out, and I did all the paperwork, all the testing, and I flew to India. And I was at a hotel. I was at the St. Regis in Mumbai, and I had to do 14 days in one room. Yeah. And it was the 14 days where everyone was saying, oh, India's done it. India's beat COVID. And then, of course, literally the day I come out, Mumbai just starts to tick up. And then a week later, literally within a week or two, Mumbai shut down, and a bunch of us went to Goa. We went down to Agonda, and there were 12 or 15 of us, really some of my dearest Indian friends. We were in Agonda, and then Goa shut down. Goa was 50% positivity. So 50% of people taking tests were positive. And so Goa just shut down. We would be on mopeds going through parts of India, which are usually just packed with people, and it boarded up. We ran out of fuel. We couldn't get fuel. We had to siphon from someone else's moped. Couldn't get water. Everything shut down in Goa. And so with my girlfriend at the time, we then flew to Mumbai, and then Mumbai to Chandigarh. And then Chandigarh, we just jumped in a car. We went about 4 hours north of Shimla. And we went right up into the mountains to a little place called Jibbi. And I am very confident I will die in Jibbi. It is the most, in the sense that that's where I want to spend the end of my life, because, okay. sorry, it's where I see myself seeing out this life, because I've never seen a place more immaculate, more beautiful, fresher, cleaner, purer. The river water, the green grass, the flocks of sheep, and the Pahari people with their smiles. I noticed Pahari people, typically their resting face is a smile. It's very interesting. You go to London, you go on the underground, everybody's resting face is like axe murderer face, right? You walk around, everybody's so glum and downcast. And cities, it's tough and whatever. Pahari people, just, their eyes are kind. Their mouths typically turn up as they approach you. They look 20 years younger than they are. Their skin is so fresh, and they're just pure souls. And the people we met, we'd stay somewhere for a week or so and then move. And this was the peak of Delta. And we just thought, let's just get away and just ride out this wave. 500,000 people, I think, catching COVID every day at that peak. And we just said, look, let's see this out up here. And it was just the most exquisite, beautiful, spiritual place. And again, we're walking through the forests, and every 300 yards, there's a little shrine in a little tree. They've just put this little bits of ribbon and little tiny statues. And it was just, I'd never conceived of, forget India, a place in the world as pure and as beautiful as this. And so that I would love to, I know in Uttarakhand, as a foreigner, you can't buy property. So I would have to marry someone from Uttarakhand, I believe.
Are you single? Because my mother-in-law was asking.
I'm presently single.
All right.
And much too busy for distractions at present. So getting the show ready and launching everything here, I've been so focused on all of this. But India again, like magic. The second I landed, it hit me, and I will be there. I will go back as often as I can. Part of the beauty of being here, as much as I adore this part of the world, is that India is on the doorstep. It's 2.5 hours to Mumbai. Yeah. So I want to start doing those.
That's nice. I feel like I not only know your past and present, I know your future as well now. So by the way, when we were at your show, we picked up this. Yeah, yes. ZILCH. What is your connection? Did you design this game?
It's
or what
my
is
baby.
It?
Top to bottom, it's my baby. So just as a family, we grew up always playing games. In fact, when we went back for Christmas with our family, we played Scrabble on the same 30-year-old Scrabble board that we've always played on. Yeah. And some of my happiest memories were playing games with my family around a table like this, right? Siblings, parents, Christmas, whatever it might be. And so when COVID hit, week one, you make banana bread or you learn a recipe, right? And then week two, we made candles. I'd always wanted to make candles. So you get newspaper everywhere and you spend whole evenings making candles. And then I made aftershave. I started learning about aftershave, and now I have.
You have a brand?
No, it's not a brand. I make it and I give it to people. And it happened yesterday. I was in Tasha's yesterday. Yes. And the manager in Tasha's, he comes up to me. I know him very well. I go to Tasha's very often. He's called Carmel. And he came up to me and he said, brother, this smell is incredible. And I just give him the bottle. I said, this is for you. You take this. So it's not, I don't sell it. It's not something I have commercial aspirations with, but it's just so lovely. And when people comment on it, I give them the bottle and I make myself another bottle. So we did that. And then probably the second month of lockdown, because you remember that initially it was 3 weeks. I don't know what it was here. But when Boris Johnson came out, so we're going to lockdown, it was 3 weeks to flatten the curve. It was nothing. And it was, there were the memes. People, it was, for 2 weeks, it was sort of humor. It was all that. Everybody was finding it quite amusing. And then it goes, no, we're all in this for the long haul. And so I just thought, okay, well, obviously magic is impossible. And what was on a personal level, professional level, quite difficult was that overnight, it was impossible to do magic for basically 2 years. I couldn't be in a room with people. So magic was off the cards. And so I thought, how best to do this? So I started writing a book, which is based in the Himalayas. It's whole nother story.
Nice.
But I sat down and I created this, and I thought, we've always played Scrabble, and I wanted to create a family game that is simple and current and plays like a lot of the popular games, slow turn-based games, Monopoly, and less frequent today. People need faster, more intense games. So I played with that. ZILCH is the fruits of that. So it's a very simple word game. I say it's like Uno meets Scrabble. So it's a card game, but it's very much about looking at a number of cards on the table and forming words as quickly as you can.
Yeah.
And if you form the word, you win those letters. And that's
So
the game.
our son, he's 6 and he loves ZILCH. He'll be the first one to grab it and say, Mama, can we play? He loves it. And today you brought another one.
So then I gave you my follow-up. This is my baby. It's my second baby.
Oh my God. Tell us, how do you?
So this is, so FIBSY, so ZILCH is available. I think we've just got it now on Amazon UAE, which is a big win. So this is available. FIBSY is more fun. So when I was a kid, we used to play cheat. In America, you call it BS or whatever, but it's bluffing. You're bluffing your family. I still don't know a higher emotion than successfully bluffing a brother or sister. There just isn't a higher, when you're that young, or of any age, your husband, wife, whatever, and you make a bluff and you pull it off.
Fall for it.
It's just the best thing ever. You could exist on that for weeks. You go, do you remember? Because when we did this. And also, conversely, when you bluff and I catch you out, and I know you better than anybody on the planet, it's just the greatest thing. I was in a meeting early last year, and I was talking to this gentleman about games, and he loved games, and I said, I've always loved cheat, and I want to come up with a game that draws on bluff. And so FIBSY is that, and you have Captain FIBSY. Captain FIBSY is the pirate. He has a little parrot bluffer, right? So effectively, you have number cards. It's all pirate themed, and you can play cards face up. But if you want to turn a card face down and bluff, you can. If you don't have the right card, you can put a card face down and bluff, and it's up to you if you want to call my bluff. And if you want to call my bluff, you say FIBSY. We have a look. Whoever's wrong picks up the cards. And this is the game. My sister came back from her wedding, and she said, with her new husband, how do you say? How do I say newly
wedded husband, I guess, yeah.
They stayed up for 3 hours drunk playing FIBSY, right? And it's the game that, I sit down, I'll play with everybody, and it's just a really lovely, fun game. And this, again, family, friends, people. What's great about this is the better you know people, the more fun the game. So people that you know and love, it's just the greatest. So these are my babies. FIBSY is not out. We're getting it out, but it's just, again, all out of COVID. And I just, for me, hearing of your son loving to play the game, it's almost like it's as close to a magical experience without me being in the room. How can you give people maximum joy without needing to be there? Have them play a game together. And so FIBSY is the new one. I have another game, the next game, which is a chess-inspired card game, which is my third, and then I think I'll finish that chapter. But 3 games, and it's such a lovely thing. People send stories and photos, and they said, "Look, in fact, there was a German family who came to the Emirates Palace November, I think, and I gave them FIBSY, and I caught up with them a few nights later, and they're so funny. They came up and they said they'd been playing in Telea the night before, the Italian restaurant, And the manager had to come over and say, I'm so sorry, I have to ask you to stop playing because you're making too much noise. You're basically having too much fun and you're disturbing the other guests. Yeah. And so I thought that was a good.
That's a win. Yeah, that's a win for sure.
Good sign.
This has been a deep dive, but I feel like so one of the things that we did was I told you a bunch of things that I wanted to do, and I asked you if we could do on-camera magic trick, and you were like, no, not really. But I feel like we've got you here, and it'll be like I can't believe Karishma had Drummond, on the show, and then she didn't even ask him. So I'm going to ask you to show us absolutely anything. If I were to teach my kids a trick, if I were to get Isaiah, who's 6 years old, on his, first magic, what would you recommend we do? A coin trick, a card trick?
In terms of learning magic, it's very, very basic.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, I'll teach you the first thing I ever learned.
Yes.
So this is the issue with magic. It's this ever-changing Rubik's Cube because, again, 20 years from now, children won't know what coins are. Playing cards are disappearing. I talk about this in the show, that I say to people, what's your card? What card are you thinking of? And the lady said the 7 of popcorn. Right? For clubs. Did I tell you this? No, somebody said this literally the other day. It was, obviously they meant the 7 of clubs, but it looks like a little bit of popcorn. And it's simply the fact that people have play cards now. They don't play traditional playing cards in the way that 50 years ago, everybody played cards all the time. You'd know the Jack of Spades, the Queen of Diamonds, all of these cards. So it's ever changing. And of course, iPhone magic is now a very big thing. People do magic with iPhones. But this was the first trick I've learned, and it's very simple. Please confirm this is not in the show. I don't open with this as a piece of magic. This is not a reflection of...
This is just on my insistence, and I just feel like we have to have a little bit of magic that Drummond leaves us with, and this is purely for Isaiah, who's a 6-year-old boy, who's my son. Not part of the impossible. My little bacha.
So it's just very simple. You effectively have a coin and nothing here, right? You take the coin. You tap it in your hand. Hands are empty. No sleeves, nothing. And when you do this again, take this here. Coin disappears. All right? So simple, so beautiful, so vow.
I feel so silly.
Very simple, very simple. But this is the simplest.
How am I gonna?
So all you do is you have it here, right? So there's elements, again, you can do this at a very simple level, but again, it'll give you a little insight into magic when it's the nuance of magic. Because you can pick this up and do this once, right? So, for example, I could pick this up, make it vanish, and that's it. But some people would cotton on to exactly what I just did. I've now lost it. Okay. Would cotton onto it, right? Because all that's happening on a level of technique, all I'm doing is I'm sliding it off the back of the table. That's it, right? But of course, you make it look like.
But I think it's the way you do it. It's not just the sliding off of it.
No, so this is it. Yeah. So this is it. So like I said, like a lot of magic, you can do this at a very simple level. You could just pick it up and make it vanish. But a lot of people would instinctively, they go, well, okay, it just came off the bag. Some people would work that out very quickly. What's lovely about this is you condition people a few times. So you tap it and you tap it on the table. So you get them used to you picking the coin up, right? On the final time, again, you want a little time delay. If for example, if I do this, if I pick up the coin and it vanishes, you know that this is 3 inches away and I just did it. What you want to do is get physical and time misdirection. So for example, when you do it twice, pick it up, tap it on the table. Do it once, get people used to it. Do it again. Tap it here, tap it there, whatever. On the third time, you reach out. All you do is your thumb is slow to get in position. So you literally slide it off and you just come up like this, right? Then you delay. Because if you do it here, they do go, well, it's just off the table. But if you come up here and then almost play with it a little bit, move away from the edge of the table, suddenly the vanish happens up. It happens here.
So much acting involved.
And it's 2, 3, 4 seconds later, so that you've forgotten, it came off. So you pick it up, you come over here, then the vanish happens here. And again, this is a very basic example, but this is a little
Look, it's not just me. Look, do you see? Everyone else. Like,
Chaps, this comes with my blessings. You're welcome to begin your own cult followings with this very simple trick. But it's a good example. And the way to practice this, what we always say in magic, is do it once for real, and then do it once with the move. And what you want to do is have those two things look as identical as possible. Because what some people will do is they'll do it perfectly, and then when they do the move, they'll flick it and get it wrong. You have to repeat. Of course, you can film yourself on your phone to really get it perfect, but it's not a complicated move. You slide it up, bring it up to eye level, do something like this, give a little bit of time, and then have it vanish there, right? So little thoda sa Jaadu.
this is amazing. You know, I by the way, speaking of card games, because you mentioned that as well, yes. I know that we do a lot of card games. We have a family game called Stop the Bus that we play the most.
Yes, of course.
Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it, yes.
If you were ever invited to our house for a game night,
yes.
Would you cheat?
So,
are you...
how do I say this? You know what's interesting about this? So I've never gambled, and I have friends who, went through their little gambling moments. I think what it is, when you're playing a video game, you know how to cheat. It sort of takes the fun out of the whole thing, because I know I can just press this button and I'm going to get the bazooka or whatever it is. With magic and card games, it's sort of the same thing. I know that at any stage, it's not really within my wheelhouse. It isn't something I would lean into. But I know that I could just do something and get the 4 aces, whatever it is. So I enjoy, this is why FIBSY is so fun, because FIBSY is not about the cards, it's about you. So you learn once you've learned the rules, it's much more about the players. This is the joy. You're in each other's heads, and then you start double bluffing, and you start triple bluffing, and you start telling them, say FIBSY, because I've just put down, tell me FIBSY, because I've just bluffed. And then you start playing these games. So I play games, to me, the games that are more psychological, I find more engaging. Less the games where it's, I don't know, there's that physical element to it. Because again, not that I would, it's not something I've ever really enjoyed that much.
Okay.
And when I left school, I went to the London Gaming College and I trained to be a croupier, 3 months to be a croupier. So I trained in blackjack and roulette, chipping up the numbers, the statistics, every element of roulette. And again, you sort of see how the sausage gets made. And so you just walk into a casino now, you know that the odds are so against you. It's just, you're just throwing money into the wind. So no, it's not something that I guess at the core level, everything pales in comparison to magic. It's, the joy of this is this. Magic is just, as I said to my father way back then, it's like, there's just nothing else. So typically that's where I sit with that. Nice.
Okay, one last thing before we let you go is, because you love Hindi as much as you do, I'm going to say some sentences in Hindi. And let's see if you know what I'm saying. Okay. All right. So first up, मेरा नाम Drummond है.
हाँ जी, मेरा नाम Drummond है. मैं अंग्रेजी हूँ.
Oh.
लंदन मेरा घर लंदन में है, लेकिन अभी अबू धाबी में रहता हूँ और जादूगर हूँ. मेरे लिए भारत जिंदगी है. मेरा दिल भारती है. I say to people, मेरे आत्मा भारतीय है.
और मैं एक भारतीय दुल्हन ढूंढ रहा हूँ. I'm looking for an Indian bride.
ढूंढ रहा हूँ. Let's see, हम देखेंगे. शायद हो जाएगा. Look at this man. He's pure love, honesty, truth, all inside of all of this. Thank you very much.
He's just a beautiful soul, Drummond. I've really enjoyed this.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. It's great to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope you've enjoyed sharing your story with us.
It's my first podcast. I've never done podcast. This is number one.
No way.
Ek number hai. Haan ji.
You are ek number. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And I think Chandran and there's Izzy. That's
Izzy.
She's my almost 14-year-old.
Okay.
Isabel.
Hi, everybody.
That's Amelia.
Oh, you have the full team.
She's 10 and a half. And that's Isaiah.
Isaiah, how are you?
Do you remember this game? Look here. What's in Mama's hands? Do you like this game?
ZILCH shuru karte hain.
So this is Drummond, who's created ZILCH. This is his game. He made it.
It's my game. It's my baby. Well, we'll sit down. We'll play in a minute. We'll have a go in a minute.
Yeah, and that's Izzy. So when we came back from Abu Dhabi, after watching your show, we came back home and told Izzy all the amazing things that we remember. And Izzy was just like, I'm going to figure out how he did it.
Well, you must come. Please come anytime. I'll get you tickets. You must come down and we'll do the full experience. It would be my pleasure.
All right.
We'll teach you FIBSY now as well.
Oh, that's another
We'll get
new
you
game.
guys locked into FIBSY.
All right. Okay. I think it's time for us to go hang out with the family now. Thank you for coming in, Drummond.
My pleasure.
This was so much fun. Absolutely. हम जाने ही नहीं देंगे अभी आपको.
बिल्कुल.
You're staying with us now for a few days.
For sure. Kuch din.
Keep watching Hey Karish. We have new videos that come out every single Friday. This is the second season, and we're bringing you guests that are just so incredibly interesting. You don't want to miss out on any one of these shows. Drummond.
Thanks, Karish.
Namaste.
I'll see you soon. Namaste. Jaldi milte hain. This is Drummond, and you've just seen me on Hey Karish. Okay, namaste. मैं Drummond हूँ. ये Hey Karish है. और कृपया like, subscribe, follow करना. Close? Yes.